issue here, and welcome to another time lapse that I did for the month of, I don't know. I started this one in the spring and I kind of ended it closer to the fall. This one is number 8 of a series of 10 of my couples illustrations. I have two Fae characters right now. As for the title of this piece, I'm not really sure what I want to title it, but so far I'm going with like the fairy knight and his dearest or something like that. I had a lot of anxiety working on this illustration. I will say that it took a while to decide what palettes I wanted to use for each characters. So over here on the right top corner, you'll see the palette that inspired for the little female Fae character that I'm working on currently right now. I was going for like these purplish and pinkish hues for her, and then for the knights I was going for more of a greenish, like sandyish colors for him. It's kind of hard to say sandy, but if you get what I mean, like the hue kind of like in that faded kind of like tone. So the Knights palette is up here on the left side for you guys to check out. The palettes I both got off of Pinterest. It was like a last minute choice for these palettes, and I did ask some advice from some of my friends for them, which actually turned out really good for this piece. Again, like I said, I had a lot of anxiety working on it. I didn't know where I was going with some of the colors and the aesthetic I was going for this piece. Including the background. As you guys all know, whenever I'm working on backgrounds for these pieces, it takes me a while to actually see the vision for them. I have a tendency of working on characters before backgrounds, but this was like a breath of fresh air because I did these two characters and then I just rolled the dice and see what to do for their palette choices. I already knew from the very beginning I wanted her palette choice to be like this deep berry color, almost plumish for her, in color tones. I did want her skin to be like a darkish pink and a lot of purples for her hair and her dress. When it came to the knight, I needed something that was going to be contrast from that, but I still wanted him to be kind of different. I wanted him to have like this greenish like skin, but I didn't want it to be too dark, and then I didn't want it to be too green like Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z or anything like that. So the succulent palette on the top left corner was like perfect to work for him. And the fact that he was a knight gave me a chance to like play around with like what his look would be and stuff like that. And I kind of layered him in a way that like succulent plants would look when they're growing. And I used to have a lot of succulent plants back in the day, so it was just interesting trying to incorporate that into a character. I wanted them to come from like two different worlds in a way. I didn't want one character to be more royalty or the other one to be more like too knightly or anything. If anything, I would say these characters are from two different worlds, and it's like their little secret meeting and she's pleased to see him kind of thing. The pose that I did choose to do with these characters, I will say I did find on Pinterest. I'm not sure who was the person who put it up on there, or if it was like a person who sourced it from another artist or whatever. But if I remember where it is, I'll probably put it in the comments below, or at least a link to the pose. I did alter the pose a little bit for these characters because he is a knight, he is holding a sword, and he does have a shield. The shield and sword, as you guys can see that I'm slowly like working on right now, I wanted to be layered like a succulent plant's leaf as well, to add to that aesthetic that he's like a knight, and also just layering for the armor in general and on his weaponry and his shield. All the colors stay true to the palette, or as close as possible. I did use a lot of my Copic alcohol markers for it, and also a couple of, I think mostly my Copic alcohol markers for that. Right now you guys see me working on the background, which was another palette choice from one of my friends that I'm very grateful for because I just wasn't sure what to do. But I know I wanted a nighttime setting that was kind of mystical and definitely different from both of their palettes. I tend to stay closer to a cool color palette in general, and this definitely fit for it, but it was that different type of blues and slight greens for this to make the characters pop but yet give the background a cool scenery. I do start off using alcohol markers working on the background, but then I also go in using gouache and I believe some watercolor as well. On their wings, which you'll probably see a little bit later, I did use some shimmery Daniel Smith watercolor paints just to make their wings look a more sheer than just being like basic white or just a regular color. I wanted to have that magical sense with them when I first was creating these characters. And I already had a view in my head of using my shimmery Daniel Smith watercolor paints because I like them, and I usually use them in some of my other like fantasy like works that I have at home and gift to friends and stuff. So I wanted to carry that over in this piece as well. As you can see here, I am layering a lot for the trees in the background. I love using my alcohol markers to make these, like, I consider them fake backgrounds in quotations. They're not really fake, it's just playing with shadows. I like to layer trees and stuff like that, so that way you kind of get depth without actually lining everything. I will say when I did line all these things for like the background, I did use color pencils to do it, which made it really light and easier to just use the alcohol markers over them, so that way you just saw the alcohol marks versus actually lining them. Here you'll see me using that shimmery watercolor paint. I use it a couple of times because I had to wait for a few moments for it to dry in between, because I wanted to really layer that shine, especially at the end when you see me like move around the illustration, so you could definitely see that shimmer. I did use my Amsterdam acrylic gold ink just for the gold parts on this. My original first 3 illustrations for this series I used gold leaf, but because I started moving to more of a smaller size paper for this, I just wanted to use my acrylic gold ink because it was just going to be a little bit easier, a little more control, and it still had that shimmery look that I wanted, like my imitation gold leaf had on my original 3 drawings that are much bigger in size. As for the size of them, they vary, but they are bigger. This one I believe is more of a 6x8 illustration. The first 5 pieces, I would say, if anything, is probably close to 11x17. But it was nice to take a break from doing the large ones. Here you'll see me putting in the leaves last minute. I was trying to figure out something that made it look like the characters were still popping, but I wanted them to have like something else to show more depth and more interest for the eye when looking at the illustration. So I decided to go in with my Holbein acrylic gouache, which I really love. Like it's like chef kiss, beautiful stuff. As for the colors that I use for these, don't really remember them, but if I can, I will put them down in the comments below in case you guys are interested in knowing which colors I actually use for this piece. But at the end, I believe I do pull out with like every single art supply that I used to work on this illustration, so if you guys could like screenshot it and try to compare, that probably be your best bet. Next time when I do one of these, I'm gonna have to actually like list the colors and the numbers of them for anyone who's interested in like picking up any of these like art supplies to work on their piece. I really liked using the acrylic gouache in this because even when you look at the original drawing, it's such a different medium that it almost looked like the leaves were like velvet on top of the drawing when everything else was like alcohol marker and watercolor based on the actual drawing. Like that blue on like those leaves on the bottom and on the sides, like that deep blue, it's just so pretty. I felt like it definitely separated the piece the way I wanted it to, and yeah, it just came out nice. Here I'm using my Faber-Castell white Pip pen just to add some little white highlights. I even add white highlights on my gold piece, my gold spots too, just to give you like that little fake like fantasy like shine. And I also have my Signal white gel pen that I use to kind of line out the wings in some spots to make it pop, so that way the wings aren't looking like they're all in one like massive piece. I wanted them to separate. I also go in with like a more tinted version of the watercolor, the shimmery Daniel Smith watercolors, to try to break it up too. But like I said, it took me some time to work on that. Here I'm working on some last minute flowers for the Fairy Maiden's head garment. I wanted to do some forget-me-nots because I felt like this was perfect for this piece. So I did little forget-me-nots on her headpiece, and then here you see me using that Pit pen again to make little sparkles all over their wings because I wanted that aesthetic for this illustration. I am a fan of Don Bluth's animation films, and that's what he did a lot for his like sparkles for his gowns and his fairies and stuff. So I wanted to add that as like a little aesthetic for this illustration as well. The original sketch, which is on my Instagram live, one of my live art sessions, which is saved on my Instagram at Mushu Draws, you can see that I put like little plus signs all over the place where I wanted those sparkles to be. But I'm glad I didn't go over the top with them for this piece, because I wanted them just around the wings and stuff like that, because it plays an homage to like Thumbelina from Don Bluth and like a couple other films he worked on for like the Fae and stuff like that. Here's the final reveal with removing our masking tape. But yeah, again, this is number 8 of 10 illustrations I'm working on. Now I'm working on sketches for illustration 9 and then finally 10, and I'm hoping to release this series of couples as in full like zine or book soon. See, you can see all the shimmer and shine right here. But yeah, so if you're interested in seeing any of the other illustrations I did for my future illustration book, you could check it out on my website, pleaseexcusemyink.art. That's pleaseexcusemyink.art, and you can check them out there. Here is the pull out with all the different art supplies I use. If you guys could take a screenshot and just try to compare the Copic markers by their caps and even the Holbein gouache, there you go. But yeah, I hope you guys like this. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content in the future, and support our Kickstarter Flawless Heart Charm. Our first magical girl card game of color is a collaborative project with J1 Studios, and I will have a link for it in the description below. Alright? Also, thanks to Jason Knockout Studios for the intro and extra videos for this time-lapse today. Really great work from that studio. And thanks to Evil Seed Studios for the intro music for this video. I will see you guys next time. Bye!